Good morning and welcome once again to Jasiri. It's a very technical day and it's going to be a very important one as well, as we're turning our focus this morning to the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit. Hashtag 31, one of the country's most important policy gatherings. Now, this year's summit is themed the Reform Imperative, building a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030. NES hashtag 31 is set to take place on October 6th to 7th, 2025 at the Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. And as always, it will bring together government leaders, private sector players, civil society, and development partners to chart a way forward for Nigeria's economy.
Well, from shaping fiscal and monetary policies to tackling social inclusion and creating sustainable jobs, this summit is about how reforms can be both bold and people-centered. Now, to help us unpack what to expect and why this year's conversation matters, we're joined by Dr. Joseph Ogebe. He's head of research at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Dr. Ogebe, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to Jasiri.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. Now, the theme this year, Dr. Ogebe, for NES hashtag 31 is the Reform Imperative, building a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030. Now, NES has long anchored Nigeria's economic dialogue in public-private cooperation. In advancing this particular theme, what foundational gaps does this particular edition explicitly seek to bridge compared to past summits?
So thank you very much. As you've rightly noted, so we are convening the NES 31 summit in October, and the theme for the summit is the Reform Imperatives, building a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030. And one critical area or theme of discussion for this summit is driving industrialization-led growth. So the summit will focus largely on driving industrialization-led growth, and they will be looking at how to build a job-rich and diversified economy, that will also promote prosperity and inclusion for the people.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ogebe. Since you've already told us what's one of the sub-themes for this particular summit is, and that is driving industrialization-led growth, I just want to ask you, as head of research at the NES group, what would you say from your research that you found that is the clearest link between industrialization and Nigeria's ability to create jobs?
Yes. So basically, let me just start, with the context of, why this sub-theme, right? Because if you check the structure of the Nigerian economy, the industry sector has actually shrunk in recent time. We've moved from the industry sector contributing about 21% in 2019, 2020 to just about 18.9% or 90%. So this is quite low. And, if you also pick the manufacturing sector as a component of the industry sector, you will notice that, the sector actually needs critical interventions. For instance, your manufacturing sector, the whole manufacturing sector accounts for just 8% of your total GDP. But if you go to other climes, right, other countries that we compare ourselves with most times, South Africa and Egypt, you see that this contributes about 15 or 13% of GDP. So the manufacturing base is a critical aspect in growing your economy. So, but for this year's summit, the summit will try to unpack, how we try to, the summit will try to unpack how to work on those critical constraints, limiting us from industrializing the economy, right? One of the big ones, it's access to power. Access to power has been identified as a big challenge, hindering our expansion in the manufacturing sector and also building a strong industrial base. Another critical factor that we will also be unpacking is, efficient logistics, right? And infrastructural deficit, a huge infrastructural deficit. It's something that needs critical intervention. As you know, most times your budget may not be able to fund your infrastructural deficit. So we need to see how to bring in private capitals, foreign direct investment and other investors, into the economy to help, in some kind of PPP model to drive industrialization in the economy.
Doctor, you've often spoken about Nigeria's weak productive foundation. Could you help us break down the biggest bottlenecks holding back industrial growth? Is it infrastructure? Is it policy inconsistency? Is it the size of informality?
Yes, so productivity is an essential for growth. And, before I answer your question, let me just give you a context of how productive each of these sectors are, right? So currently, we have a very weak productivity base in the manufacturing sector, because if you consider what we churn out, our manufacturing output as a share of, the total number of people we employ, right? It's very weak. And this is weak because of existing structural constraint. And one of the top is the, weak infrastructural base. The infrastructural base is very weak. When you pick the infrastructure, power is a critical enabler for growth and productivity. So what you hear people say is that just give us power, that Nigerians are not lazy, just give us power. Most of these SMEs, you will see them bouncing back to reality. Another critical factor for productivity, like you rightly mentioned, is inconsistent policy. But we've seen this slowing down in recent time compared to 2015 to the previous 2 years. And also, another factor limiting our productivity is also in terms of informality. The SME contributes about 80% of employment, but it's largely informal. So we need to see how to, bring most of these informal SMEs into the formal space, and that will also help us, in channeling critical intervention in these SMEs to help boost their manufacturing, to help build manufacturing and also industrial base.
All right, now you talked about, the need to bring these SMEs together, but can you tell us, what realistic steps, can bring them into the informal economy or the formal economy, I beg your pardon?
So I think one of the steps you can do is by, incentivizing these SMEs, right? When you sample SMEs, they will tell you that some of them, they pay taxes, they pay different kind of levies, but they don't get to see what the government is actually doing for them, because they provide their power, they provide their security, they also provide, logistics and the likes, right? So if you try to provide some of these incentives, it will help them to also come into the formal space. Another thing you need to look at is also how to capture your SMEs. We need to have a registered SME database so that this can also help the government in terms of targeting the right SMEs, to boost production and also help expand your manufacturing base. Another way to also get these SMEs into the formal space is what we see currently with the tax reform, what the tax reform hopes to do, by lowering the number of taxes, the multiple taxes these SMEs pay, right? So, and also trying to give them incentives to formalize. So I think Nigeria is in the right direction, but first we need to also try to get a database of all our SMEs that will help for intervention, and the government needs to also, improve in terms of social contract on, what you offer to businesses.
All right, Dr. Ogebe, SMEs generally are seen as engines of job creation, but credit access remains very tight. Access to credit is something that, they all grapple with. Beyond loans, what innovative financial mechanisms, like credit guarantees or digital financing platforms, that would unlock their growth, help them to grow more? And also, how can Nigeria shift from lip service, support to targeted support for these SMEs, especially those who are adding value in their sectors?
Yes, so when we sampled SMEs in the first half of the year, one of the top challenges they face is access to finance, and also they complained about the high cost of loans, right? And, some of these businesses, they have big risks. So first, to me, I think there needs to be a way to see how to de-risk this organization. And one of the ways you can go about that is to, is to work on the credit guarantee scheme, like you rightly mentioned, to see how, some of these DFIs can come in and guarantee some of these SMEs that can actually contribute to growth and development. But first, if you want to target SMEs, right, you need to have a structure. You need to know which SMEs you're targeting. You need to have a database of registered SMEs. You need to also know the trajectory of these SMEs over time and the SMEs in specific sectors that will help target specific SMEs for growth and industrialization. But yes, credit guarantee scheme is quite important to help some of these SMEs, surpass their challenges of, access to some of the challenges they complain about, access to loan and high cost of financing.
Okay, Dr. Ogebe, I'm wondering if NES #31 were to leave just one strong outcome behind, what practical industrial policy recommendation do you think Nigeria must not ignore?
So, if you ask me, I think the critical factor that Nigeria must not ignore is, infrastructure, right? How to help build infrastructure. It's a Herculean task, but we think that infrastructure is the bedrock for to help a productive economy. Because you know what that will do? Once you have infrastructure fixed, once you have roads, once you have power, and once you have coupled with enabling environments, right, it will help lower the cost of production. Businesses will be able to produce, businesses will be able to compete, businesses will be able to produce and export their goods, and this will generate revenue and foreign currency for the economy. So I think infrastructure is a critical enabler to help boost productivity and also help create or expand revenue for SMEs in Nigeria.
And Doctor, what gives you hope that Nigeria can actually transition from just talk to a job-rich, diversified, real economy?
Yes, so this is very possible because if you check other countries, right? If you check other countries like South Korea, Malaysia, and Indonesia, this has been done. But the government needs to be intentional, to do this, right? So there are simple steps, like I mentioned. You need to work on productivity. You need to work on market access. Market access is very, very important. The cost of moving your goods from Nigeria out of the country, it's kind of, you face a lot of hurdles there, right? You've seen the numbers, in terms of exporting. So, but I think the national single window they are trying to work on now will actually help, unlock some of those constraints, right? So, market access is important, productivity is important. Some of these countries, they've done that before, but for you to do this, we are not saying that it's just, you need to fund this directly from the budget, right? There are other innovative ways you can actually fund infrastructure to help boost productivity. Like you can bring in the PPP model. You can also make your economy, better for FDI to find its way into the economy.
All right. Dr. Ogebe, now the Nigerian Economic Summit, has been shaping policy since 1993. What legacy do you hope that the 31st edition, leaves behind for everyone who attends? And are there bold commitments that Nigerians should hold policymakers accountable for after the summit?
Yes, so as you know, the summit will bring together critical stakeholders to discuss how to chart the path forward for the economy. So in this year's summit, like I said earlier, industrialization is a sub-team out of the various teams we are considering. Just for our viewers, we're also considering, how to unlock investment and global trade, and also we're also looking at driving digitalization, and we're also looking at, building infrastructure for competitiveness. So there are various, insightful themes to discuss in this year's summit. So it's very important. It's a very important event, and we hope that when we discuss these things, most of the recommendations will be actually implemented by the government. And if you check the trajectory of NESG over time, some of the big reforms, from the banking sector reforms to the digital and telecommunication reforms, they've actually been discussed at the summit, and some of the summit recommendations, led to this big shift or big push in some of these sectors. When you see the banking sector's growth or the digital economy's growth, some of these things were as a result of what we discussed and deliberated and the outcomes of the summits that the government has actually implemented.
Dr. Ogebe, sorry, I want to take us, just before we round up the conversation, I want to take you back a little bit because you touched on it slightly. When we hear industrialization, we think just factories, but there is a deeper and a wider definition in the context of what industrialization means for Nigeria today. Can you just expand quickly on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so industrialization itself is, you're trying to, expand your productive or your output base in a more efficient manner or in a more efficient way. And, this, it actually has some linkages, backward linkages with agriculture, right? So outputs from your agriculture we should be able to transform our raw materials rather than exporting our raw materials, right? We should be able to transform our raw materials and, create finished products for either for export or for domestic use, right? So in doing this, there must be some kind of backward linkage with your agricultural sector. What we've seen over time is that agricultural sector's output has been expanding, though productivity is low, but the manufacturing sector's output, has dropped over time, right? So you see a kind of disconnect between, what comes out from in terms of raw materials, from the agri sector, and what comes out from the manufacturing sector. For instance, if you check your food and beverage industry, which is under your manufacturing sector, right? You see that has actually dropped. The output has actually dropped over time. But if you check your crop production or your, crop production or other categories in your agricultural sector, you see that, it has actually expanded over time. So there is this disconnect between what we get from the agri sector and also what goes into the manufacturing sector. Rather what you will see is that, you see services expanding. We focus largely on services-led growth, but we think it's quite important for us to pivot back to, industrialization-led growth by building industries, right? Because we know this is what creates the, high-income jobs, and for us to transition to an inclusive and prosperous economy. Industrialization is very, very critical for job creation compared to the services sector. So it's something that we hope to focus on in this year's summit.
Dr. Ogebe, before we round off completely, I want to ask, is there any link, or how do people that maybe cannot be on site, how can they benefit from this summit?
Yes, so the summit will take place in this October, Transcorp Hilton. For those that can't join, there is a space to register online. So there's a link you can click to register online. So you can register online ahead of the summit, and so as to participate in this noble and rich discussion that we hope to come forth October 6th to 7th. So you can actually join online. You can register and join online.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ogebe. We've been having such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for enlightening us. And we look forward to this summit because a lot of education and learning would happen. Thank you very much. All right. Welcome again if you're just joining us. Education should be the foundation of national progress. But too often in Nigeria, it's where we see some of the deepest cracks. We'll take a quick break now, but when we return, we'll be discussing the barriers to brilliance and the urgent reforms needed in our education system. Alex Onyia, education consultant and CEO of EduCare, will be joining us to unpack this conversation. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the show. You're still watching Jasiri right here on News Central. And let's turn our attention to one of the most pressing issues shaping Nigeria's future, which is education. Every year, WAEC and JAM results spark conversations about performance, failures, and systemic gaps. But behind the numbers are children with incredible potential, children whose brilliance often struggle against barriers of poor infrastructure, limited access, and also systemic inefficiencies. Now, joining us for this conversation is someone who has been very vocal about education reform in Nigeria. He has been here before, and I'm talking about the CEO of EduCare, Alex Onyia. Alex, welcome to Jasiri.
Thank you for having me here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. It's good to have you. Now, Alex, you've often highlighted systemic failures in Nigeria's education system. Looking at the WAEC 2025 results and the stories behind them, what do they tell us about the state of our schools and what needs urgent fixing?
For the state of our schools, like I've always said, there's a lot of imbalance. There are some schools you will go to, a school of 400 students. They only have 3 teachers. Some even have 1. And these same people are expected to write WAEC with schools that have probably 200 to 300 very qualified teachers. So you can see that a lot of children are strongly disadvantaged. That is one, from the student, from the school part. Secondly, even the WAEC, you remember that children were writing exam at 9 p.m. So that's already is a very big problem. Now, aside from the issues with the schools, the issues with writing exam very late, the WAEC system itself also had glitch. So you can see that there is issues at every single cadre. I mean, we can't keep living like this. That is why things really, really need to change very fast.
You know, when you mentioned, Mr. Alex, when you talked about WAEC, because it affected my son, and I'm wondering that when did this start to happen in Nigeria? But we'll get to that. Recently, you tweeted about a 14-year-old Nigerian genius whose brilliance stood out for you. What does the story reveal about the untapped potential in our classrooms and how the system either nurtures or wastes this talent?
Unfortunately, I don't know why it seems like every single year things keep getting worse. You know, I don't know if you know that children, these new generation children are significantly more brilliant than the older generation, right? So what it means is that you start seeing a lot of, there's a boy that was 4 years that wrote a book. When you went to school, probably you start realizing that you could write a book maybe from 15. So there's a lot of geniuses. So this, because of the new policy that's now going to say that if you're not 16, that you won't get to school, meaning that so this particular child that's 8 A's and 1 B with 326 in JAM. So this child has to wait extra 2 years if he wants to school in a Nigerian university. Do you know what it means to have gap year of 2 years? Do you know how the child will highly likely going to degenerate? So I'm not against the policy, but I feel that the policy doesn't need to be at effect now because there's a lot of adjustment. Probably you should give it like at minimum 1 or 2 years to even start. If you go to the US, the youngest PhD child, 17 years old. So we need to understand that Nigerians are naturally super brilliant. Nigerians are not like the rest of other countries that you may see. So one of the most brilliant blood or anything are Nigerians, right? So some of the policies, you need to understand how unique we are. Some children are probably 12 and super brilliant. So there should be some clear considerations for these exceptional children, which we have them now in much more numbers. So when the parents reached out, I looked at the result, I looked at everything. I just said, let me throw it up. I already have my suggestion is, Nigeria may not be the best place for your child. Send your child abroad. If you can afford it, send your child abroad. I'll see how I can help you probably get a scholarship in the US. Just let your child go there and let your child achieve their full potential. But what the sad thing is that if once that child gets to the US, the child will never come back again. So we keep losing exceptional talent because of the poor systems that we have. So that for me, that's actually where it is on that plan.
Mr. Onyia, I hear you, and I think that there are other merits behind the policy that was made about the age that children should be in universities. There are merits for it because I believe that part of it is that there's a certain age where you are not mature enough to take on what the world has to offer at that point in time. But it does bring us to the education system, the examination system, the approach, so to speak, with testing, testing the children, testing intelligence, testing creativity, and all of that. We see that WAEC has become almost a make or break moment for millions of young Nigerians, yet many feel that the exam doesn't reflect their true intelligence or creativity. In a system like this, should WAEC be reformed? Do we need a complete rethink of how we assess students in 2025 and beyond? The answer may not always be take your child abroad. Not everybody has that recourse. But not everybody has the resource, so to speak, to make that happen. So what do we need to do within the way our system works? And when you also said, when you also said that 2 years gap in education can do a lot for the child, I understand that. But it means that there should also be other ways to engage, someone like this, who is 14, who is a genius, who is fantastic, but can't go into university because of the policy. There must be other ways to engage them so that they keep improving and developing until they reach the age to enter university.
Yeah, for me, there are policies that just like, for instance, you wake up in the morning, you started noticing a tumor in your body. You won't just cut it off or try to take it away. No, you have to take time. There are processes and systems. Probably it may even take you up to 6 months to even start getting to the tumor. It's really not about you are trying to remove something. The point is, you were not the minister from time immemorial. You actually came probably like a year or so, right? There are things that are already in the system. They are wrong, which I completely agree with you. But getting them to stop now, there should be a plan. Knowing that the system has worked like this, there are a lot of children who are definitely going to be victimized because of these things. You can keep it like 2 or 3 year plan, knowing that by the time children are getting to, because this correction starts from primary school, children who are jumping from primary 4 to secondary schools are actually where the fault starts. So when you correct that part, you can come up to the next part. Then before you come up to this other part. So you've not even corrected the children jumping from primary 4 to secondary school, and you're already blocking them. Meaning that if you leave tomorrow, these issues will definitely continue. So I'm not saying that the policy is bad. It's a fantastic policy, but I don't think now, normally, this actually ideally should take like 5 years to say this should be in effect in 5 years. Meaning that you've already started correcting it in primary schools, correcting it in secondary schools, and then everything automatically takes shifts. For me, this is the best way to approach this, right? Then in terms of the WAEC itself, I feel that there must be an assessment. What is an assessment? You've gone through different years of what we assume is learning. There should be a standardized assessment, which was even the origin of WAEC. And then, let them create a system that can help them even assess West African students. It was people from the University of Cambridge that actually designed WAEC. So WAEC is even not a Nigerian thing, it's from the University of Cambridge, right? So now, WAEC, the whole idea of WAEC is to assess students, which is good, and it's still very relevant now. What did you learn in school? Do we have like a standardized assessment to know wherever you did your learning, let's ensure that everything is meeting standards? That is the purpose of WAEC. But the point is, the world have moved from rote learning, which is the la cram, la pour, la forget method that we use, to critical thinking. Meaning that if you're writing an exam like IGCSE or maybe SAT, you actually need to understand what you are trying to answer. Nobody's going to ask you divine photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is blah, blah, blah. No. They will ask you questions that applies to photosynthesis. So if you can answer that question, that means you genuinely understand photosynthesis. Nobody's ever going to ask you, is this a verb? Is this not a verb? No. They will ask you questions that if you can actually answer them, that means you actually understood what verbs are. So WAEC should transition their assessment from the rote method that they are using to applying critical thinking, meaning that children are no more studying to pass WAEC. They are studying to understand the subject matter, knowing that it is only when they understand it that they can actually write WAEC and pass. One of my last conversations when I tried to engage them from back, they were saying that the question bank plan, because I mean they are looking at transitioning fully to CBT. Getting questions now is a lot. We already now have AI. So you can even prompt AI. I need questions on this, apply critical
thinking. AI will respond. AI will respond. Alex, please, just hold that thought. I don't want you to lose it. I'm interested in the conversation about AI, and I'm looking also to broaden the conversation regarding the Nigerian curriculum. We'll take a break here. When we return, conversations will continue about the education system in the country. All right, conversations are even happening during the break off air with the ladies on the Jasiri table. We're speaking to Alex Onyia, he's the CEO of Educare, and we're examining the problems, what's going on in the Nigerian education system. Before the break, Alex was making a very interesting point about using AI, because whether we like it or not, that's where the world is going. But Alex, I'm not taking away from what you were saying, but I just want to add to it. While you continue your conversation about AI, please let's take into consideration also the fact that the Nigerian curriculum is often described as outdated, failing to prepare students for today's job market. So in your view, in addition to what you were saying, what kind of curriculum overhaul is needed to match global competitiveness while still addressing Nigeria's realities?
So, you know, they've already lived from Harvard, they're actually very angry with me. I've actually put a lot of pressure on NERDC, that these are the people that are in charge of curriculum reviews. There are budgets every single year. Unfortunately, for the past 15 years, no single change has happened in that curriculum. And we've talked about changing curriculum, but there's something else over my thinking. I just thought of, you know what, Nigerians adapt to something that their life depends on.
Yes.
If WAEC says changes, like WAEC government, if you notice, government in WAEC is no more easy. But government in WAEC applies critical thinking. So people that write government in WAEC, that is not easy. So they prepare differently. If they apply critical thinking in every single subject, they will automatically force the schools to change.
Okay.
So meaning that, because most people, the way Nigeria is designed is that people are going to school in preparation for WAEC and JAM, because this is like a crossroad for their career or for their life. And this is most schools that you hear about, schools, lesson centers, miracle center, anything they call themselves. Everybody's kind of preparing their children for WAEC. And that's basically the yardstick parents use. Knowing this, if WAEC changes and adds critical thinking, and people, there's serious mass failure, this time around, not because of glitch, but because children actually found it very difficult to answer those questions, because it requires you to understand it for you to answer it. Automatically, schools will change. They will know that this is their current method and not pass WAEC. So the critical thinking that we've been trying to tell them to change and improve in curriculum, the schools will be ahead of NERDC, because if you wait for them, it's highly likely that in another 10 years, nothing will still happen. So sometimes these agencies can take the lead. So that is my advice. I have said a lot of things about curriculum. So the truth of the matter is that the people in these agencies are highly incompetent. Okay. So when you have highly incompetent people run these agencies, right? Unfortunately, you will never expect any good result. So if WAEC decides to go in a different direction or JAM decides to go in a different direction, they can actually lead this change.
Yeah.
But if we want to start thinking about this thing, we've argued it a lot of times. And it seems that these people don't even understand what to do.
Yeah. Mr. Alex, you know, when we look across Nigeria, you see that there are two dichotomies. We have the urban and the rural schools. And everybody knows that the dynamics within these two divides is quite wide. How much of our education crisis is about inequality to access? I remember a time you told us that you had to equip a school because of how backward they were. They had no computers, and you're expecting these children to do a JAM, and many of them have only have access to one computer in an entire school. How would you say that we can bridge this gap realistically, that when you see some of our urban schools and even the rural schools is at par, even if it's not equal, at least let it be close?
The inequalities is actually way, way, way more than you can ever think of. You know, right now, I'm actually going a lot deeper. And like in the Southeast, for instance, I mean, all the 95 local governments, I'm going into deep village. So I understand how rotten these whole things are, right? But one thing you need to know is that until the government wakes up and declares state of emergency in their schools with the right intention and with the right people to lead that change, there will never be progress. Remember, there's an emphasis on the right intention and the right people to lead that change. If they don't do it, because for instance, the high tier schools they probably do a blended curriculum. There's almost no high tier school here does a pure Nigerian curriculum. Every high tier school does a blended curriculum. They are mixing British, American, and Nigerian Finnish. They are mixing all these things to be able to, and then to be able to get what they want their children to do. They want their children to write WAEC and do well. They want them to write JAM and do well. They also want them to write IGCSE. They want them to write SAT. They want them to transition to A-level or IB. Yeah. Right? So these are the things, this is what they are in, and this is their competitive edge. Because you can't charge somebody 3 million per term for just teaching A is for apple or teach them rubbish. You get my point? So you need to be different, right? So this is basically what they are doing. They are constantly seeing what's changing in the British curriculum, looking at every other place. So to run those kind of schools, it requires a lot. Now, the mid-level schools, which are still private schools, right? Or some mission schools, who are still managing maybe a blend of British, but more of Nigerian curriculum. They still have a lot of gaps because teacher attrition is so high and the teacher quality is really, really poor. Like I said earlier in one of my posts, there is no single graduate from Nigerian Teaching College that is qualified to teach. So when they graduate is actually when they go to get trainings that they require to actually teach. Check out the private schools that hire people. Some of them like Green Springs, Corona, they have their teaching college because they have to go through their teaching college for you to qualify to teach. So most private schools hire people who graduate from Corona or Green Springs Teaching College. So now, you're talking about those gaps, then look at the public schools, whereby teachers don't even come to school. Teachers, probably the last time they had training was 20 years ago. Okay. Then even the schools, the teacher doesn't, you see that everything is so bad. So, and required education is just really not about teaching science and arts. Education starts with care. Because child development is a process. There's what you expect from a 7-year-old. There's what you expect from a 12-year-old. Yeah. So people in those, in quote, high-end schools have those advantages. Whereby a teacher even understands the growth, a teacher communicates with the parent or guardian, a teacher understands the gap. There are learning materials, there are trainings on emotional intelligence, there are trainings on almost every single thing. There are trainings on phonics. So when you want to teach people how to make pronunciations, you start with phonics. So there are a lot of trainings across almost every single vertical. There is safeguarding. In public schools, these things does not exist at all. When we had the intervention we did for JAM for my own village, and we noticed that these children you want to write JAM, you've never touched a computer. That was a gap. It was relatively easy for us because we had to start teaching them the core basis of computer. They are teaching you about mouse and they are drawing mouse in a blackboard. And you went through school all your life and you never experienced what a mouse is. And you're not presenting it to come and write JAM with the rest of the people who went to schools that they use computer to take classes.
All right.
And then they are saying that you failed because you are not serious.
Alex, we'll definitely continue this, but we need to take a quick break at the moment. Stay with us.
Oh my. All right, welcome back. We're on the home stretch of Jasi. Where did the time go? Yeah. And of course, the CEO of Educare, Alex Onyia, is with us. All right, so Alex, quickly now, let me take you through this claim where some states say they're experimenting with different models. For example, Abia State's Smart School project has been praised, whether we like it or not, it's a big deal, has been praised in different quarters as, and even your tweet about it was quite loud. You said it was a joke, but it has been praised. So do you see these as scalable models, or do you think they're just political headlines with limited real impact? So if you're leaning toward that, what would you say are the alternative approaches that states should explore?
Abia States, they are praising them for what? Exactly. I understand that Abia State have experienced bad governance more than 20, 30 years, right? So they are still coming out of the shock. I mean, Alex Onyia came, started doing things that are not normal. So yes, he's doing a lot in some other areas. But in terms of education, to be frank, he may be trying to do a lot of things, but he's an absolute failure in that part. So I will not be the one to come and praise what does not exist. In other areas, I can see that he's making, I mean, you've suffered for 20 years, and for the first time, you are having light, you are having water, you are having roads. These are things that are usually not normal. There's sanity in your area. Definitely, every other thing can assume to be praised. But in terms of education, which is also extremely critical, all your efforts, there's absolutely no visible result. Everything has always, I saw that smart school. From the information, from the course I started receiving, and I certainly haven't approved these 20 smart schools. But then you invested 7 billion. So who is going to pay back that money that you invested? So invest 7 billion, yes, you've not approved it, you've not commissioned them, but you people spent money and built rubbish, right? I don't even understand what they're trying to do. So the point is, in other areas, they are trying, in education, unfortunately, maybe they are still experimenting a lot of things, but this is 2 years plus. So would you experiment? Do you even know if you're going to come back again after this tenure? So if you haven't taken education very seriously the way you took the rest, then unfortunately, I don't know. There's an intervention we did in one village in Abia, Ozuitem. That particular school had over 400 children. I'm telling you, that school had only 3 teachers. And the 3 teachers is the principal, the vice principal, and the principal's wife. And the vice principal is blind, teaches English. So we were there, we stayed there, we spent 3 weeks there. So it's not like we were telling you what I read on the internet. We renovated, we spent like almost, I forgot how much we spent there, to be able to see how we can bring the school back to life and bring back energy. So is it that type of school that you will praise?
Maybe it has not reached there.
Alex, now earlier you talked about, the case of Abiola Abidoye, the Nigerian who just bagged the highest A-level results ever, and you also, advised parents that if they had the opportunity, they should take their children abroad, and you also talked about, helping with international scholarships as well. And I seem to remember here on Jasiri, we talked about Nafisa Abdul's story. That's the 17-year-old girl from Yobe State who emerged the world's best in English language skills at the 2025 Teen Eagle Global Finals in London. Now, Alex, why do you think so many Nigerians excel abroad but struggle to thrive, in the local system here in Nigeria?
If you listen to what I said earlier, Nigeria is the most brilliant blood you can ever see on earth. Anywhere you put a Nigeria, they will thrive. The only place they will not thrive is Nigeria. Nigeria is
the soil is not good for us.
What accounts?
Is it that our soil has no manure?
What is going on?
It's laughable.
The Nigeria, let me ask you, aside from coming to work, when you wake up in Nigeria, what inspires you? Even as an adult, Tell me one thing, if it's not APC and PDP that you hear,
Alexander,
tell me
don't
one
do
thing that inspires you. Nothing. You wake up, you hear issues, crisis, crime, killing. Is that what inspires you? No. So that's why any small fresh air you get, you realize that your potential was even negative in Nigeria. So Nigeria is the most brilliant, super intelligent, brilliant world ever. But their biggest problem is in Nigeria itself.
Wow. See, there are so many questions, there are so many angles. I think there are so many issues to discuss within the education sector. And honestly, 30 minutes, 20 minutes is never
not
enough. I feel like we actually have only just begun this conversation, because there's a discussion around technology and digital tools. How do we make them available? Can we rely on them? We've seen what happened with the glitch with JAMB and WAEC. Even today, I'm not sure if the results that they re-release is even reliable enough to depend on. So it's difficult. But if you could change one thing about Nigeria's education system today that would have the most impact in the next 5 years, what would it be, Alex?
Everybody in the form of leadership position, I would change a lot. With leadership. Once I change all of them, everything will start fixing itself. Once I get the competent people in place, competent people with good intention, that's actually how it starts. Because if you have the wrong people there who are only thinking of how to get more money, how to get more contracts, because, you are in a public position, what do you have to lose? If anything goes wrong, you can lose anything. The next administration bears the brunt. And they take their own, the next one bears the brunt. So you have nothing to lose. It's not like you're running your private business whereby if anything goes wrong, you have everything to lose. So if I have the opportunity, anybody in any form of leadership in all those places, I will clean up all of them and then get young, super brilliant blood who have very good intentions for the country. Let's see how we can get things done very quickly.
Very quickly, Alex, what do you have to say if you put one side teachers on one hand who are underpaid, overworked, and then you put on the other hand the government who are thinking about raising the salaries of the president and the ministers? Quickly, what do you have to say about that?
Oh God. The only way to survive in Nigeria is to wake up and laugh. Because if you choose not to laugh, you just die off and you won't continue. The truth of the matter is that Nigeria is one country that is very good in prioritizing rubbish. Teachers, who are the people that actually decides the future of the nation, they are still begging you to help them. Then the people who has absolute no value to the nation are the people that you are prioritizing. So why would you, the truth of the matter is, Nigeria is just a funny place. You just have to wake up, laugh, keep living your life, ensure that you just do the right things, do what you need to do, and then see. But the truth of the matter is that we actually need these changes. We can't keep having this kind of thinking. That is the reason, when you remove, there's the importance of critical thinking. Somebody who has critical thinking embedded in their life should actually apply common sense. Common sense should tell you what to do. I don't have to tell you what to do. You keep stealing money. People have been stealing money even before you were born. Where are they today? Can't you tell yourself, okay, what is the future? Because at the end of the day, once Nigeria starts succeeding, you will have a lot more to steal. Everybody will be prosperous. Why should I keep flying 12 hours just to go to another man's country, to enter train and keep walking around? No. People should come to me. And we need to be able to develop our place, and which is through education. So for me, declare state of emergency with the right intention and the right people in education now. And let everything go, ballistic, because that's the way it should be. So things will start changing. No joke.
It's okay, we don't take us out. It's okay. We get your point. It's okay.
It's a serious conversation. Obviously, I can see the passion in which you're talking. What today's discussion only reiterates for us, I think, is that the challenges in Nigeria's education system is not just about exams or certificates. They're about the future of our children and the kind of nation that we want to build. Alex Onyia, I know that this is a short conversation, that there's a wider one to have, but we're happy to...
come to your station so that...
we're very happy to have you on Jasiri, and we hope to continue this conversation after today and another time. CEO of Educare, thank you for helping us shed a light on these critical issues and at least helping us laugh a little bit as well.
I know.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to our audience for staying with us. Thank you, ladies, for being so wonderful, as always. We'll see you again tomorrow for more conversations on Jasiri. Have a wonderful day.